Welcome in, everybody, and we'll still have folks coming in, but welcome to our June FL Fast Innovation Ecosystem call. So I just want to have a couple of quick announcements and an update on FAST real quick before we get to our amazing speakers for the day today. So we'll doing a quick intro and updates now. Our speakers are Stephanie Miller from Embry Riddle, Aeronautical University. We'll talk about some of the resources and some of the programs they have in supporting entrepreneurs at Embry Riddle. And then we'll have Amanda Kosty from the US EDA's Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship talking about the open build to scale opportunity right now. If we have time, I'll share some additional resources, announcements, events coming up. If we don't get to that, I'll share all that in a follow-up email a little bit later this week. And always, we'll have any announcements from ecosystems. Feel free to put those in the chat as we go and at the end. So for those of you who are new to joining us, just want to give a quick overview of what FL Fast is. So we're part of the Federal and State Technology Partnership Program, really with the goal of increasing access, awareness for SBIR, TTR awards across the state of Florida. We do this through outreach to ESOs like yourselves, to entrepreneurs. We provide technical assistance for companies pursuing SBIR and STTR grants, and I'll share a little bit on the next slide about how we do that. And then financial support through our matching grants program, the Florida High Tech Corridors Matching Grants Research Program, which will match up to $150,000 for university and industry collaborations. So if you have an SBIR award and you are working with either UCF or USF, there is some matching dollars for the university scope of work. Assuming you meet some of the criteria there, I'm happy to share more about that. The goal for this call today and for every month for our ecosystem series calls are to really connect, collaborate, hear from peer ecosystems to learn about funding opportunities. And so we're going to be doing a lot of that today with our guest speakers. So before I hand it over to Stephanie, just a couple of really quick, fast updates and some things we have coming up that either you can participate in or your entrepreneurs can. So one is from July 11th to the 13th. We have a 3-day series focused on Department of Energy SBIR. So this is lined up with the solicitation dates and the topic openings for Department of Energy. So we'll have a 3-day kind of deep dive on Department of Energy and everything that entrepreneurs need to know to apply for DOE SBIR. On August 23rd, we'll have a train the trainer. So this is only for ecosystems and like folks on this call, kind of understanding how you can work with your entrepreneurs. So that's also a free session. I'll put links in the chat to register. And in September, we have an ABCs of SBIR, kind of an SBIR 101 session for anyone who wants to join that. These are all recorded, and I'll share recordings and slides afterwards. And then finally, we are launching a kind of a focused effort, a cohort-based approach to help companies go apply for Department of Energy. You see the QR code there in the link. I'll put that link in the chat. If you have any companies interested in Department of Energy, we will use a cohort-based approach. We're modifying something we've done for the National Science Foundation, where any companies that submit a letter of intent and get that accepted by DOE will have weekly office hours, help refine proposals, do proposal reviews for a limited number of companies in the state of Florida going for Department of Energy. So there's more information, and you can click there to submit. Any company can submit there to apply, or it's really a kind of a letter of interest. So feel free to share that, and I'll have details on those coming up. But with all that said, I want to hand it over to Stephanie Miller, and I will stop sharing my screen here. Stephanie, feel free to take over. Stephanie is with Embry Riddle Aeronautical University, and they have a lot of great programs and resources where they help entrepreneurs, and she will talk through everything that they do to support their companies. And before I hand it over, please feel free to put questions in the chat, and we will have time after each speaker to questions.
All right, thanks so much, Jack. And hopefully you should be seeing my first slide there right now. But I know one thing Jack has done in the past is to ask a bit about, sorry, do we have someone unmuted? I was getting some feedback. Was to ask about books and resources and other things to recommend. And I'm just about to finish up Startup Boards, another book that came out from Brad Feld, an author that I'm late to the party, but starting to really appreciate more and more. So definitely highly recommend this. Once I finish, I'll be loaning it out to some of our incubator clients and suggesting that they take a read. to learn why startup boards, both board of directors and board of advisors, are important, even at those very, very early stages where they think they might not need it yet. So a quick recommendation about that. And I'll jump into an overview of the Embry Riddle Research Park and the Microplex technology business incubator that we have within the research park. And then since the focus of this call is more about funding and SBIRs, just a few thoughts that I have about helping clients with funding and ways that we might be able to do that maybe are a little non-standard from what has been heard in the past. Perhaps we'll see. But as an overview of the research park, just to give you oriented about how big we are and our buildings and everything. We opened up 6 years ago with the John Mica Engineering and Aerospace Innovation Complex, which thankfully we shortened up to Microplex to make it quicker and easier to say. So that opened in 2017 as the cornerstone building of the research park. The next year, we added a standalone wind tunnel facility that has speeds, it's subsonic, but speeds up to 230 miles per hour with some advanced imaging systems inside. And then shortly after that, we opened up our applied aviation and engineering research hangar. This building has access to the Daytona Beach International Airport through a taxiway that we were lucky enough to get extended into our research park. So pretty nice and specialized amenity that we have here. Not surprising considering our focus on aerospace and aviation. And then I don't have a in-person picture yet, but our Advanced Technology Manufacturing Center was recently completed, and our first tenant is actually moving in tomorrow. So I'll be updating that slide soon when we have the final version of that. But all in all, across these current buildings, we have about 25,000 square feet of lease space between the incubator and larger spaces for our regular research park tenants. So that's anywhere from an office similar to mine all the way up to 5,000 square feet, which is an entire floor of the ATMC building. Where we are full at the moment, fully leased out, which is a nice place to be in. But whenever we have occasional turnover, we reach out to companies that might have interest in joining the research park and usually are able to get a new tenant in very quickly. So we're lucky to have a lot of demand for the types of services and capabilities that we offer. So those are our current buildings, but we've just this summer broken ground on the CC and Hyatt Brown Center for Aerospace Technology. I believe we announced this about a year ago when we got not only a generous gift from CC and Hyatt Brown, but also a match from the state of Florida to put this building in. It's going to be about a year and a half in the making, but a 65,000 square foot facility that, like our other buildings in the research park, will include both our own researchers and space for tenants to lease out. So that building just broke ground. We're also going to have another hangar built out back over the next year. And it was just announced today, or very recently, I can share that the Florida state budget, again this year, we were lucky enough to get funding, and we'll be building a skiff to add to the research park. So a new capability that a lot of our researchers and a lot of companies are interested in as well. So once we do all of that building, we'll have finished up all the space that we have in this side of the research park, but luckily across the street, there's 75 more acres to expand to. So once we finish up this kind of phase one, let's call it, of the research park, we'll be continuing to build more and thankfully have a lot of support to do that, both from funders, from Embry, Riddle, and from donors. So we really appreciate that. Just a quick rundown of the labs that we have here in the research park. I'm not going to read them all off, but as you would expect, all of them deal with aviation, aerospace, space, or generally engineering. Most of these are labs that are run by our College of Engineering. You know, our own research goes on in there. But those labs and the capabilities of the researchers we have in those labs are available to companies, large and small. So if you have a client that's looking for a specific capability and we might be able to help them with that, they don't have to be a resident of the research park to take advantage of these. Might be through a sponsored research contract or something like that. But are very open to working with industry, no matter where they're located. And that includes the campus labs as well, not just the ones in the research park. The next slide is just a quick showing of the companies that are here or have been a part of the research park. So kind of that top group are those that are here right now. Both our business incubator clients and our tenants that have larger spaces and are a little farther along in their journey. And then the group at the bottom are those that have been involved in the research park in the past. And many of those are still going concerns, and for whatever reason, especially outgrowing the research park, have decided to move on. And that's a great outcome for them. And then finally, the last thing I want to mention is just some of the outcomes. We obviously measure ourselves and try to benchmark against ourselves and and other research parks and what we're able to do in terms of serving our community, economic development, and helping these companies. So in the 6 years that, a little over 6 years that we've been open, 25 companies have been involved in the research park. Importantly, a lot of student interns have had the chance to work within those companies and learn a lot and get probably more responsibility than they might be handed at a larger company. Jobs created, we're always looking to do great economic development for our local area. So over 174 high wage jobs created. And many of those are those student interns that once they graduated, decided to stay on with the company and continue their journey with them. And then probably most relevant to this audience, the follow-on funding that they've gotten both in equity and based financing and in grants. In March, it was 106. I think we passed 110 now. So cumulative over the 6+ years that we've been in business, we've been able to help our companies bring in quite a bit of funding, and we're pretty proud of that stat. So finally, just the ERAU Research Park is our across our social media handles. If you want to follow or like those, so that you can be informed of any upcoming events that we have, usually during the school year. The summer is a little slow since we are a university. Our website there, and then my contact information if you would like to know anything more. So I'll just leave that slide up and just say a few words that I wanted to bring to the group about helping our clients with funding. And I think probably most of us, if you work with startup companies, are used to funders or founders coming in and saying, who do you know that's a VC that could, fund my startup? And a lot of times it's that early conversation of educating them on the types of funders, when they're appropriate, and protecting your own network. A lot of us as ESOs know angels, know VCs, know program managers, and having that discretion, know when a company is ready to interact with them, although they might not be happy to hear that. I think educating them on, making sure that they are ready to talk to that particular funder and know enough how their company might fit into their type of funding. I think it's really important to do that. So a lot of times those conversations here are about de-risking both the technology risk, and that's where SBIR and STTR grants can come in to do that early de-risking of the tech. And then our incubator and accelerator programs and other ESOs really help out with de-risking the business model. And a shout out to Starter Studio and Don and Bob, who are on this program. They run one of our accelerator programs, and the session that they do about de-risking and how they measure it and prioritize it for the companies going through their program, I think is one of the best I've seen, and something that I keep in mind when I'm talking to my own companies. Beyond kind of protecting your network and bringing investors in at the right time, ways to expand your network. I think a lot of us know about things like going to events, the Florida Venture Forum, Synapse, Emerge, conferences like Tech Connect that's going on right now. Even demo days at other incubators and accelerators have been a great way for me to network. And I love going to those events and seeing if there's a company that we might be able to help, not to necessarily bring them into our incubator or research park, but connect them with one of our researchers that can, again, do that technology de-risking that they often need. The other two things that I've started to do pretty recently, one is volunteering for grant panel reviews. So I'm sure most of us are aware of some of the programs coming out of the NSF and now the EDA as well that are focused towards regional innovation. So I was on a NSF panel recently towards that particular goal. And I've volunteered to be on an NSF panel again for the ART program that I believe is either due soon or maybe already due, but just trying to get in there and understand a little bit more about how they review those grants. If you come from a technical background, you might have been involved in reviewing those types of grants for many, many years, but it was something new to me, and reviewing it more in the idea of the innovation space and the new programs coming out, I felt was really valuable for my own knowledge and being able to guide our clients. The other thing is engaging some of the newer programs, especially we've had a lot of success with AFWorks and SpaceWorks, having some of their representatives come here and not only just speak about what the program is, but we've invited them to be judges at competitions that we hold, to visit and see our capabilities, set up one-on-one meetings with our companies that may be looking for that kind of funding in the future. So that's another great way to engage with these program managers and other people working in that space to help them educate yourself and your clients. And finally, I just wanted to talk about the importance. Of course, I get a call right now. Let's silence it. The importance of assisting your clients with grant writing. One of the things the Startup Boards book was great about talking, having your advisory board as someone that can help you not only identify grant opportunities, but help review your proposals. I do that for a lot of my clients. Of course, I can't do with the technical review, but making sure it flows well, that it hits the points of, the type of things that particular agency looks for. And generally helping to have them the most well-rounded proposals that I can. But that advisory board should serve that function as well. Of course, there's a lot of free services out there. Florida Fast is a great example. BBC, et cetera, is one that I know the UCF system works with. I've started attending their programs and getting my clients working with them. And I'm sure there's several other free services. If people know them, please put them down there so that I can check them out as well. Just to help orient these clients that may be new to a particular funding agency or the SBIR or STTR programs in general. And finally, maybe a little controversial in helping them is hiring grant writers. I haven't been able to get budget for us to hire the grant writers for them, but helping them with find a good grant writer or reviewer to help them. Some clients love the idea, some clients very much push back against it and are not interested, and that's certainly fine. But these grant writers can increase the chance of getting them, and typically they either have a rate that you pay per submission, or some will work on kind of contingency, where if you get if you're awarded the particular grant, the profit section can be used to pay that grant writer when you're successful. So like I said, we've had some clients that have done that, have great success when using a particular grant writer, and others that just aren't interested. But in any case, having these different programs and resources so that they can access this early funding, de-risk their technologies, be ready for the introductions to your network of funders from grants to angels to VCs and beyond, I think is some of the things that I think about when funding, helping our clients find funding. Jack, that's all I got.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I'll see, are there any questions so I see a question in the chat from Ali. Do you have any best practices on finding grant writers?
That one, unfortunately, I do not. My client that's been real successful has one that he works with, and I've gotten that name and given it to a few others. But I'm not aware of any particular directory or way to find good ones. If anyone knows, I would love to know.
Yeah, I think it does tend to be a kind of a network. You learn who does it and kind of connect those folks. I will say one of our companies in Fast, her first time applying for NSF SBIR, and she hired a copywriter, so not a grant writer, so someone to go back through and help kind of this, make sure the story connected between sections and those kind of things, and found that incredibly helpful. So just one other point of.
And someone just posted up a link in the chat. I'm definitely going to check that out.
So I certainly have a couple of questions. Does anybody else in the audience have questions for Stephanie? Feel free to unmute and ask if you have something. I don't want to talk over anybody. We'll see. So one question I had, Stephanie, is you had your the list of research labs at Embry Riddle. You had one of your slides, but you said, so what's the process if I'm a company that's not in the research part, but that wants to see what facilities are available or learn how to kind of engage with that, whether it's for an SBIR or just for generally for research? How does that process work? Who should I contact?
Yeah, so a lot of times people will contact me and I'll make sure you get to the right place that way. But we also have our vice president for research and doctoral programs who oversees all of the research at both of our residential and our online campus. And so he's got a better overview of what goes on across campus to be able to introduce a particular researcher that has the skill set and equipment or lab that a company needs. So if it comes into me and I know someone off the top of my head that has what they need, I'll do the intro directly. Otherwise, our vice president for research is often in his office as the gateway in.
Excellent. So one other question I had, let's jump in. But one other question I had, I guess, is you talked about the importance. I absolutely agree. Being on review panels for some of the innovation grants and things is a great way to learn kind of from the other side. So I know you said you're part of one of the NSF panels previously. So is there something you learned from that? And this might be a segue into Amanda, but there's something you learned from kind of being on the review side of that you might was either surprising or that you might think to incorporate into future proposals that you'd be writing?
Yeah, it was my first time serving on a panel. And I think the biggest thing that I learned is that no matter how long that grant package, you really need to focus on the details throughout the entire thing. I had spent a lot of time working on reviewing the narrative and not as much time as I learned I should have on the budget and the letters of support. Not just that they were there, but looking to make sure it all made sense. So for the next time, if I'm picked for another review panel, I'll know that. But it's a big time investment on your part, but I feel like I learned a lot as the program managers asked questions of us as a panel and as we wrote the review that would go back to the proposers.
Excellent. Good to know. Yeah, it's always good to do that, to try and sit on the other side. It just helps you with clients and with proposals that you'd be writing too. So,
yeah.
Let's see, any other questions for Stephanie? And Stephanie, if you're able to hang on to, put questions in the chat as we go. We can always keep the conversation.
Yeah, happy to.
And also, so I know you shout out Don and Bob from Starter Studio. They will be on this call next month on July 18th. So it'll be a good continuation for that. Okay, well, with that said, I think we will hand it over to Amanda Kosty from the EDA to talk about Build the Scale. Hi, Amanda. I'll let you.
Hi, everyone. Yep, let me see if I can screen share. Make this big. Sorry, I'm gonna go back.
Yeah, no, we're
okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Kosty. I'm the lead of the Build to Scale program. So first and foremost, I'm sure most of these calls, you guys talk a lot about how to best support your clients. Well, this is a program for you, not your startups. So let me get that out of the way up front, and we're going to jump in. So anyone who's a policy wonk, in case you're wondering, the Build to Scale program is authorized by the Stephenson-Welder Technology Act of 1980. So this is, you guys can, I sent the slides to the team here, so hopefully you guys will get them afterwards. But for anyone who is a policy wonk and really wants to look up where our goals and things come from, this is it. But I'm going to skip past that for now. The Build to Scale program has been around. This will be our 10th year with this program. So we have a ton of great examples for anyone interested in learning more about the program. But I'm really proud to kind of share this slide, which shows our program impact over the last 9 years. with this program. So it's done a great job. We're really focused on impacting regional innovation economies. We're really focused on helping you entrepreneurial support organizations reach more businesses, more startups, and really focus on your tech-based economic development strategies regionally. So I just have to take a second to share that information here. So when we talk about Build to Scale program, we really got to look into what community needs are we addressing. This is obviously a very basic rendering of what a community needs to have economic prosperity. But we like to think of the Build to Scale program, probably similar to what many of you do too, is really focusing on the intersection between business support and innovation engines. So that's where we see this kind of program. EDA overall does fund other aspects of this pyramid. We do some work on basic infrastructure, even a little bit of broadband. But for this particular program, this is really where we like to focus our energy and find our right fit. So who is our right fit? Well, hopefully it's you, entrepreneurial support organizations. So again, when we think about the entrepreneurial ecosystem, we know we have entrepreneurs, we have scalable startup companies. There's a lot of individuals, partners, contractors who make these things happen. But we always say that our sweet spot is working with those, normally I say entrepreneurial intermediaries that are providing direct services to the entrepreneurs, helping get them off the ground, everything that Stephanie was just talking about in her last presentation. Before we get into the fine print of what is the program, I do like to kind of start with eligibility. So like I said, we're looking for those entrepreneurial support organizations that are looking to do direct programming with scalable startup companies. But you do also have to meet our eligibility requirements. So for us, this is all dictated by statute. So if you're a state or city, an Indian tribe, other political subdivisions of a state. So basically if you're sort of government, a municipality, a county, a city, etc., you are eligible. If you are those are what we kind of consider public entities. If you're a non-public entity, the reason they're separated into lists is the checklist requirements of what goes in your application are slightly different depending on if you are a public entity or a non-public entity. So a non-public entity might include a nonprofit organization, institutions of higher education. So that could be community colleges, universities, private, public, public-private partnerships, which is the partnership between a private, normally for-profit entity and a public, like a government entity partnership, science or research parks, federal laboratories, venture development organizations, and economic development organizations, or a similar entity that is focused primarily on improving science, technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So if you are an entrepreneurial support organization and you meet your eligibility standards, now we're ready to go. We also accept applications from consortia of any of these as well. One thing I do want to note, and you'll see in this bright blue box here, is this program is mandated by statute to have a 50% match requirement. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But basically, every dollar of EDA funding you apply for, you also have to bring a dollar of funding to the table. We have another slide just on that, so we'll talk about that in a second. And if there's questions, please throw them in the chat and I'll get to them. I'm kind of flying through these because I want to make sure we have enough time for questions at the end, but feel free to drop them in the chat and I can address them when we're done. So what is the program trying to do? So we know who our eligible entities are. We know what demographics we're kind of targeting in terms of we're looking for entrepreneurial support organizations, but what are we actually trying to do with the Build to Scale program? Well, as dictated by the statute that I mentioned earlier, we're really looking to build public and private capacity for innovators to invent, improve, and bring to market new products and services. We want to expand ecosystems to help support job growth. We want to accelerate regional economies and focus on industries of the future. We really want to work on regional leadership through TBED strategies, TBED meaning technology-based economic development, looking for to assist companies that are looking to commercialize new technology, and of course, equitably and inclusively increase access to capital for technology-enabled entrepreneurs. So you're going to hear me say technology-enabled and TBED a lot. You know, when we think about what kind of ESOs we're trying to target, this is really designed to support, like I said, scalable startups. So we are looking a lot at tech-based structuring. So under the program, we have two different competitions. We have the Venture Challenge and the Capital Challenge. So it's one program called Build to Scale with two different competitions, the Venture Challenge and the Capital Challenge. So we're going to start talking about venture first. So the Build to Scale program is really, again, focused on implementation programming. So we're not building buildings under this program, but we are doing basically everything that happens inside of those incubators, accelerators, et cetera. So this is a programming grant designed to provide ESOs funding to accelerate scalable startup companies. So what are the type of programs we've typically seen? We see a lot of tech incubators or accelerator models. We can fund coaching, we can fund programming around tech transfer and commercialization. And again, we are open to kind of different models out there, but basically the end goal is looking for programs that are going to really focus on catalyzing regional technology-based economic development strategies. So under Venture Challenge, we actually have 3 different funding levels you can apply for. Again, these are top limits. It doesn't mean you have to apply for these numbers exactly. We have Ignite, Build, and Scale, which are the different names of the funding levels. And I'll have a graphic that'll sum this up shortly. But I'm going to skip Ignite for a minute because we have a whole new slide on it because it is brand new for our 2023 competition. So I'm going to spend a minute more on that. But under Build, so again, all the programming we just talked about in the last slide, Build, you can apply for up to $750,000 of federal share. So that for a period of performance expectation of about 3 years. And then under the Build funding level, we're really looking for projects that are either piloting a new model or implementing a proven solution, kind of at that funding level. So again, if there's something new you want to expand on, this might be a good opportunity to do that. Scale is our highest funding level offered under this program. So this is anywhere between $750,000 and $2 million of federal share, again, with the same period of performance of 3 years at max. And really, this is looking, if you have a model that you already know is a proven promising practice for you, is going to work, and you're really looking to scale it up, this might be a better funding fit for you. Yep. So Venture Challenge Ignite funding level. So this is actually a lower funding level. This is up to $300,000 of federal share, and it's actually a shorter period of performance. So we're looking for a program that's going to be 18 to 24 months. And really, we're adding this in to really focus on building our pipeline, really focusing on nascent TBED communities. So if your region doesn't have as big of a presence in technology-based economic development, doesn't have a cohesive plan, is trying to become more of a tech center or get tech going in the region, but hasn't quite found its mark yet, this might be a good funding level for you. So if you've already been a past Build to Scale recipient, you probably shouldn't apply for Ignite. We're really looking for kind of newer communities that are trying to start their journey to hopefully eventually become a Build or a Scale level grant. But this is, again, up to $300,000 example program. So this is really focusing on bringing your region together on this. So this might include planning, governance, partnership building, community planning for a TBED strategy, conducting feasibility studies, community needs assessment, impact analysis, etc. Now we're going to talk about the Capital Challenge. So the Capital Challenge focuses on addressing barriers entrepreneurs face in gaining access to equity-based capital. So we hear it, you hear it. We know entrepreneurs' biggest challenge that they face oftentimes is funding. So the capital challenge is an opportunity for you as an entrepreneurial support organization to help address that barrier. So what we often see under the capital challenge is entrepreneurial support organizations forming a new investment fund. So creating their own VC fund, basically. We can fund operational supports for that fund. So that looks like investor recruitment, education programming, or if you already have a fund and you're looking to expand it, again, we can fund a lot of the operational components of it. The only thing you cannot do, well, not the only thing, one of the major things you cannot do under the capital challenge is you cannot use federal grant funds to capitalize a fund. So you cannot invest your money directly into the startup. I know earlier we were talking about pass through to startups. Under the venture challenge, you also cannot do pass through to startups. This is operational funding for your organizations to run programming around these kind of things. The other model that's not on here that we have funded a lot of is we have funded a lot of like angel networks as well. So I should probably add that on this slide. So under the capital challenge, similar to venture challenge, we have two funding levels. We have form and deploy. So this will sound familiar, but to the 2 slides ago, but form is up to $400,000 with federal share with a period of performance expectation of 3 years. And again, this is focusing on piloting a new model or implementing a proven solution, but maybe not at a total scale. And deploy is looking at anywhere from $400,000 to $750,000 of federal share for up to 3 years. Again, this is looking more so if you have an existing proven program model that you're looking to scale a bit more. A reminder, all of these do have a one-to-one match requirement, no matter which funding level you're looking at. So I know that was confusing. I should have put this slide at the beginning, but I put it at the end. So just to sum it up, for 2023, we have $50 million, which is the most the Build to Scale program has ever had in our appropriation from Congress. We have, under the Build to Scale program, we have 2 different competitions running simultaneously, the Venture Challenge and the Capital Challenge. And then we have 5 different funding levels, depending on which program you're looking at. So I also want to note the first question, I can't see the chat, but I'm guessing somebody might be asking, can you apply for both? Do I have to apply for one? How does it work? You can apply for both. What you cannot do is you can apply for one venture and one capital challenge in the same year. You cannot apply for one build level and one scale level. You cannot apply for 2 venture challenges, or you cannot apply for both a form and a deploy. But make sure if you are applying for each a venture and a capital that you, again, I'm going to talk a lot about match because it's probably the biggest area that people have challenges with. You cannot overlap your batch. It needs to be committed for that application. All right. So we're going to jump into the application process. This is, I know, very tedious and very fine print, but want to make sure that everyone applies. We know federal funding can sometimes be challenging. Our process is different than FAST programs, so I want to walk through it a little bit. Before you even start your application, it's important to make sure you know where your UEI number is and that your organization is registered in SAM.gov. Next thing you'll want to do is create an account where you're going to apply, which is the EDGE account. EDGE is EDA's brand new platform that's going to be accepting where you'll be applying, so you can get it all set up. So if you have any tech errors, you can get them out of the way up front, and then making sure you fill out and attach all your forms inside. So we're going to go through the forms really quick. And in the notice of funding opportunity, I'll make sure to drop I should have put the link at the beginning, but I'll be sure to drop the link in the chat as well for the notice of funding opportunity. We do have checklists at the end of the application, so this is all there. So I'm going to fly through this. You'll need to fill out an SF424 and a 424A and a CD511, which these are all kind of basic general information, your budget forms, and provide a certification regarding your lobbying activities. Also, as an attachment to the SF424, we ask you to define your project area and give us the FIPS codes. We do have a template for that to help with it as well. And again, I'll drop all these in the chat shortly. Next, if you are a state, people are often confused on what is SPOC compliance or EO Executive Order 12372. If you are in a state that requires you to have a single point of contact, I think there's about like 23 states that have this requirement. You need to make sure you're in compliance with that. So it's totally based on which state you're in. I can't remember if Florida's on that list. I'll have to look. But if you are a non-public entity, if you are a nonprofit, venture development organization, an economic development organization, if you're anything that's basically not the government, you need to submit what we call organizational documentation. So that's a certificate of good standing, articles of incorporation, your organization bylaws. You'll also, if you are applying with an indirect cost rate, aka NICRA, an indirect cost rate that's not the de minimis, you'll need that to attach as well. And depending on your lobbying status, you might need the SFLLO. So if you lobby, make sure to fill that one out. We do require a project narrative. Our project narrative hopefully isn't too bad. It's 10 pages. So we're not asking for, 50-page thesis on technical components. We're looking for 10 pages. And this is what we want out of it. An executive summary, mapping out your ecosystem resources. What are your vision, mission, goals, and roles for the program? What are your proposed solutions that you're trying to solve for in your ecosystem? What are the partnerships that are going to help you get there? What are the goals and outcomes? What's your plan for your program sustainability? And a one-page scope of work. So really, we're asking for 9 pages and a scope of work. A quick tips for grant writing here. Making sure your project narrative should be clear and concise. Really looking for you to figure out what gap is currently missing in your ecosystem and making sure you have feasible strategies to address it. More and more, EDA, we focus on economic development and regional innovation. So we really are looking for those partnerships. We want to make sure you have clear, achievable metrics and scopes of work as well. Great. Next, we need a budget narrative and a staffing plan. So we are looking for kind of an itemized breakdown by year. Like I said, the scope can range anywhere from 18 months to 3 years. So we're trying to make sure that we're tracking it by year. That this obviously should align with your scope of work and support the rest of your application. And we want to make sure that all of your budget documents match. So there are 3 different forms that will ask for various parts of your budget. The budget narrative is the most comprehensive of that, but we do want to make sure that it aligns with your other forms. So the biggest thing is to watch out for unallowable costs. Again, the biggest one being making sure you're not structuring direct pass-through to startup companies who are not eligible for this competition, and then watching out for that budget misalignment. Match, I told you we'd talk about it. So matching share commitment letters is a requirement. So no matter which part of which funding level or which competition you apply for, there's a statute regulated 1-to-1 match requirement. So you ask for $200,000 from EDA. You also need to bring at least $200,000 to the table. So that can look like a number of different things. It can be cash or in kind. It can be, someone's personnel time, fringe. We've seen various models here about what that looks like. It can come from a third party. It could come from the applicant itself. The biggest thing for us is we need to be able to track it to make sure that you're meeting that 1-to-1 requirement. So what we ask you to do is to provide matching share commitment letters. So that looks like a letter signed by a person who has signatory authority at that organization. So whether it's your own or somebody else's, we need to make sure that it's signed. And the letter should include a note about what the match is. So whether it's cash or in kind. If it's in kind, we do, and if it's cash too, we do want a dollar amount. We will do the math. So we need you to make sure that you include a dollar amount, who's giving the match. And then we do need the letter to verify regardless if it's cash or in kind, that the letter is committed to the project, will be available for the project, and is neither conditioned nor encumbered in any way that would preclude it from being consistent. So we are going to, yes, and then, sorry, a quick asterisk at the bottom there. We, in our notice of funding opportunity, we have very specific definitions of a subaward or a subrecipient versus a contractor. So if you have partners that are going to be funded, that are going to be subrecipients under your project, that's great. You know, they can provide matching share. If it is a contractor, which does have a different legal definition to us, so make sure you understand those. Contractors cannot provide matching share and receive federal funding. So they can do one or the other. They can either be a contractor that is paid with federal funding, or they can be a contractor who provides match and will receive no federal funding. So just want to highlight that there. If you are a non-public entity, again, anything that's not a state, tribe, or basically a city, county, municipality government, you need to include a letter of support from a state, county, city, municipality, et cetera. So I want to highlight, because we often do see this mistake, this is a required notice for you. You can always include extra letters of support from anyone you want, including congressional members, councils of government, et cetera. However, they will not meet this requirement. So you need to have at least one letter from a political subdivision of a state. That is a legal term, not my term. I know it's not very descriptive, but basically you need a government support letter that is a local or state government to meet this requirement if you are a non-public entity. Okay, so you finished the application. Hopefully it wasn't that bad. But now you want to know how you'll be scored. We just heard from Stephanie, who's now served as a scorer. So she might understand this, but this will tell you how we're going to score you. And this is our breakdown of what that looks like. So are you leveraging ecosystem resources and assets? Your proposed solution and implementation plan is 30% of your score. Does your team have the capacity and feasibility to get the work done? Basically, will your project grow innovation economies, which is our ultimate goal? Continued effects is basically, what is your program sustainability plan? And then finally, are you doing this in an equitable way? Common application mistakes. You've heard me harp on it today, but under matching, make sure your match is secured and that it's documented and that it's clean. Make sure you're not missing any documentation. If you submit an incomplete application, we may not consider it. Make sure you're an eligible entity. And then again, no direct investments into companies or entrepreneurs. These are kind of the biggest mistakes that get people knocked out. So we just launched this 20 days ago, and our applications are due July 28th. So you have over a month still to get it in if you haven't started. We'll look to announce the awards in the fall, and our anticipated start date for this program for the next cohort, for our 10th cohort, will be November 1st. So for planning purposes. And check out, oh, I did include our website. Great. So on our website, we have, please go to this. I could drop it in the chat too, but in our website, we actually put together a bunch of templates to help with the application process. Again, we know federal applications are kind of hard. So we have a bunch of templates on there that are not required, but easy enough to use. The notice of funding opportunity is posted there with all the fine print. And if you still have questions, you can contact me and my team at oie@eda.gov. We do actually answer our inbox. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and see if I can answer some questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amanda. So if anybody has a question, feel free to unmute and ask it. If not, I have plenty. Going through questions. So, and I did put the NOFO and the link to the Build to Scale site in the chat. So we should have that straight after. So I had a question sort of related to, so you talked about the Ignite program being for nascent communities. And is that, do you have any more thoughts or kind of help on how you define that? I guess I'm thinking there might be some communities that have experience in helping one sector, but there's so maybe that's energy, but life sciences is nascent. So would that count for Ignite, or kind of generally TBED kind of?
Yeah, I think the bigger component there is the programming's a little bit different. So under the build and scale funding levels, we're looking for people who are going to are ready to jump right into the operational implementation, who are going to be running a program and working with entrepreneurs right away. Ignite's designed to do a little bit more of the organizing before you're ready to do that. So if your community, I think, pivoting into, if you don't have the infrastructure, I guess is the question, to kind of jump right in and do the initial programming, or you feel like your region needs some kind of planning time. This is an ability to do a little bit more of the bringing the partners to the table, figuring out what a strategy is before we kind of move forward it. But if your community is already ready to jump right in. I should also note you can apply for build with a lower level. Like I said, it says up to $750,000. Those are top end. We always every year fund, applications that have come in not at the top end of that. So if you want to apply for, $300,000 as a build applicant, put that in your narrative, and we're happy to consider you in that category as well.
Okay. Excellent. Sandra, I see you put a question in the chat, but do you want to unmute and ask? If not, I can ask it.
Well, my question is more thank you for the presentation, Amanda. Very, very helpful to understand the big picture. Is there an option for an institution to apply from different programs? We have at my university, we have the SBDC with a focus in the community side, but also we have a pipeline that is in the technology commercialization side, but both are related to the topics you want to fund. So can you accept from one institution multiple applications?
So you can apply, this is a very bureaucratic answer, but if you have the same EIN number, so I know some different departments, the reason I specify it that way is I know we've had institutions where maybe there's a nonprofit center that's associated with the university, but is not part of the university. Like they can apply and the university could apply because they have different EIN numbers, which is your employee identification number. If you have the same EIN or UEI number, the uniform entity identification number, something, I forgot what UEI stands for, but if the departments that are applying have the same number, the answer is no. But if they are different, then they can. So each UEI number can apply for one venture and one capital challenge grant. But depending on the structure of university, if it's like a subsidiary that has its own legal identity, then both can apply.
Thank you.
No problem.
Let's see, I'm looking to see if there's any hand raised or questions. So another question that I think will come up in applications is sort of how should applicants define, or how do you look at defining the region or the community of service for an applicant? So advice or thoughts there?
Yeah, so EDA is very flexible on our definition of a region. It's completely up to you to define your region for us. So I make the bad joke all the time that, we're the Office of Innovation Entrepreneurship. If we weren't open to innovative ideas, like we'd have to change our name. So I feel with regions, EDA very much lets you define your region and what that looks like. So we do ask you to kind of submit and have a clear definition of which counties that includes, but we are talking, very geographically focused. It can cross state borders, if that makes sense to you. Really what does your region look like is up to you to define. So we don't have any, this particular program does not have any hard, fast parameters around that.
Excellent. Give it a second to see if anyone has questions. So I have one more just that I think might come up is for the capital challenge. So kind of two parts. One is to clarify that even the match funds cannot be used to invest in companies. Is that correct? Obviously, the federal funds.
Correct. So anything that is considered a matching fund to meet the match requirement must follow the same guidelines as you would. You have to spend it the same way you would as if it were federal funding. So unfortunately, no, we cannot accept investment fund dollars into the program for that reason.
And then is there any minimum or limit for the investment fund portion that would be, you know, it's outside of any of the grant funds, but is there any kind of expectation or minimum limit for either of the two tiers for that?
Nope, we don't have a fund size requirement. We do ask that it is equity based, but we're open to different different models there. So no debt based program funding under this particular program. But again, this is really operational support for ESOs like yourselves to really do, you know, to help your entrepreneurs. But unfortunately, a lot of money cannot go directly into the entrepreneurs. They're kind of the end beneficiary for us.
Okay, excellent. Anybody else has any questions? If not, we'll wrap it up, but feel free to unmute if you do. And I think those were all of the questions. So thank you so much. I mean, and the slides are available. Any kind of last words, last piece of advice, Amanda, for folks that want to think about applying?
Start your applications early and, you know, make sure that you understand kind of all of the, we have a brand new application system. So if you've applied in the past, it's going to look different this year. So I would just say, if you're going to apply, try to get set up as soon as possible, just so you can understand if there's going to be any hiccups, particularly if you're not already registered in sam.gov, because that can take a couple of weeks. So don't wait till last day. And my other quick piece of advice to kind of echo what Stephanie said in her presentation, as you guys were talking about copy editors, is I always encourage people to, you know, find somebody friendly who understands the work you're doing, but didn't work on the grant, or maybe doesn't work directly for your organization, to help you proofread your application. The number one thing I always tell reviewers is not to make assumptions and don't fill in the blanks for your applicants. So make sure that what you're trying to say is cohesive enough that anyone can understand what you're trying to do and can be sold on your mission.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a consultant I worked with who helped companies with SBIRs, TTRs, and his advice was find someone who's not part of the company to review, particularly someone who's critical. So he would always recommend find your teenage son or daughter to review and see what kind of feedback they would give. So I'd be, because they'll be honest with you and critical. But so yeah, thank you so much. Oh yeah, any final words, Amanda?
Nope, I'm good. Thanks all.
Perfect. I put a link in the chat for where you can find it's a drive with all the slides and links from today's call. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day, and we will see you all in July. Have a good one.